Welcome, seekers of the paranormal. And listen in as we dive into the eerie and unexplained. So turn off the lights as we join Dustin and Luke in exploring the unknown.
Of course, the thing would decide to play with the noisiest toy possible right now.
Shit happens, I guess.
Welcome to another episode of Exploring the Unknown. I'm Luke.
And I'm Dustin. Oh, Luke, you just texted me.
Today we have Terri on, and she witnessed a Bigfoot.
Yeah, she was out camping. She was the only one in the campground, and this big old Bigfoot came strolling on through, and we talked about Bigfoot, talked about aliens, we talked about spacecrafts. A lot of things happening out there at the E-CETI Ranch.
You ready to get into this episode?
Yeah, let's do it.
There she is.
Hi, there you
Hey,
are.
how are you?
I don't really want to appear, if that's okay.
No, that's totally fine.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've always been one that was interested in things that people would talk about, but that they hadn't seen ever since I was a child. I grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee, and when I was a child, they used to talk about things like cattywampus, which would get you if you're out after dark. So every time I was out after dark, I would sprint between the neighbor's house and my house to make sure that the cattywampus didn't get me. And growing up, it was pretty normal, but I have seen things flying overhead that definitely weren't normal. But, I kind of took it as just another occurrence and didn't think much about it. Which, when I finally got to see a Sasquatch in 2018, my first reaction to it was, that it's something normal that people kind of freak out about, but I didn't freak out about it. Then I did some research and found out that it wasn't all that common, so I felt really blessed.
Now, when you seen it, was you? I think you said that you was out camping.
Yes, I used to have a converted cargo trailer, sort of a stealth camper, a really small one, and I had just taken my first trip out in that camper and made reservations for myself up in Washington State at the E-CETI Ranch. And E-CETI, I'd been wanting to go there for years. It stands for Enlightened Contact with Extraterrestrial Intelligence, is what E-CETI stands for. So I went up there and I got to meet James Gilliland, and I met several other people. It was November the 4th, and there weren't many guests there because it was already getting cold. So I had the whole field to park in, off grid, of course, by myself. And the night before, driving up the mountain to get there, it was dark, and I kind of sent out a message while I was driving because I was excited. I knew that not only could people see light ships there, but they had also seen Sasquatch there. And all my life, ever since I was a child, I felt every time I was in the woods like something was there behind the tree, hanging out with me, not coming out to scare me, but it was there. I could feel another presence, and it was not frightening because, it was being very careful not to frighten me. So I just kind of took it as just one of those things. So as I was driving up, I sent out this message. I said, I felt like you Sasquatch people wanted me to come over here to this place out here in Washington State for a long time. So I'm going to make it now. I'm finally getting there. And if you want to come out and say hi, that would be okay. And I didn't think any more of it. And that night, I spent the night in my camper. And then the next morning, I went over and had breakfast with the people at the main little group of buildings they have there on the other side of their Skywatch field. It was all very nice, and I went out to the camper to relax. It was around 10 or 11 a.m. By that time, and I let the ramp door down on the back of the camper because it was chilly but not too bad, and I was sitting all the way back inside the camper. It was only 10 foot long, so it's not like it was that far. And looking at the autumn colors, just really happy that I'd finally made it there. And I saw someone walking along the fence line. It was not a huge distance from me, but it was far enough to where, I knew they couldn't see me because, I was all the way up inside the camper, but I had the whole back end of it open. And then I realized, wait a minute, that's not necessarily one of the neighbors. Why is this thing walking along the fence line completely brown from head to toe? And that's when I just froze. I think I was holding my breath. And I stared at it without moving. I was afraid to move because I thought if I moved, it might notice me. But in retrospect, I think it knew I was there, and I think that was done because I asked for it. So this wonderful specimen of a Sasquatch with these huge shoulders, I could definitely see the muscle definition, was strolling by, and he had this little bit of a, happiness in his walk, like he'd just been to visit friends or something. So I noted that. And I knew that if I tried to take a picture when my phone was laying right beside me, I knew that it probably wouldn't be a great picture. And if I moved, he might look at me. And I wasn't ready for that. So I just watched this Sasquatch walk by for, I don't know, it must have been at least 10 or 15 very long seconds because there was just a gap in the woods at that point. And when he got through strolling across, I was sitting there kind of in disbelief, asking myself, was that? Did that? What did I just see? And I kept asking myself that for about 10 or 15 minutes. And then I saw a person walking along the same fence line walkway there on the other side of the fence line, only this time it was definitely a person. He was walking the other direction. He was kind of short and dumpy, or at least he looked short compared to what I had just seen. And he had two dogs. Each of them had their own leash. And he walked on by. And I said, okay, so that was definitely a neighbor and a human. And I noticed when he walked by, there was an old abandoned white car back in the background. And that's when I noticed how he measured up to that car, and I remembered how tall the Sasquatch was. So I realized the difference. And then I was like, yep, that definitely was a Sasquatch. And
That's amazing.
I kind of took it in stride. Yeah, it was like, okay, where's my bucket list? I can check that one off. Later on that day, I went on down to the buildings again, and everybody was sitting around a table of the people who worked there and a few guests. But James Gilliland was there, and everybody was asking him questions. And I told him about what I had seen, and he said, "Oh yeah, they walk along the fence line fairly often." And it was no big deal to him because he's seen plenty of them. So, yeah, I didn't think much of it until later on when I realized, wait a minute, I was really blessed by being able to see this.
I had a lot of encounters come out of Washington State. We listen to a lot of Bigfoot podcasts, and a lot of people claim to see him in Washington State.
Yep,
Hmm.
Northwest is definitely a hot spot.
If you had to guess, how tall do you think the Sasquatch was?
Well, compared to that man that walked by 10 or 15 minutes later, he seemed to be about, I don't know, not much more than half as tall. He didn't look like a tall man, so say he could have been, 5'9" or something. So I guess that Sasquatch could have been at least 8 or 9 feet tall.
My
Wow.
And
gosh.
he was amazing. His physique was amazing. If I was a lady Sasquatch, I would have probably been more interested, but I just was impressed by his physicality.
Now, did you see any more features besides like? Did you see any like his facial features or anything like that?
I just saw his profile. If he'd turned his head toward me, I don't know what I would have done. I don't know if I could have handled that or what. But he was just walking through. He was on his way somewhere. The brown fur was kind of a dark brown, but it had a very slight reddish tone. Not red
Hmm.
like, some of them, but he was definitely brown. It's just that it had a little bit of tone to it.
Now, would you say like the hair was more like long and wispy, or kind of like matted and rough?
No, he looked like he was in, you know, clean and groomed, kind of. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but it wasn't long and shaggy. He was a good looking Sasquatch, as some of the photos that you see and some of the videos that you see. But his hair was kind of a medium length.
Hmm.
It, like I said, it wasn't shaggy. But as far as animals uh, go, he hadn't been rolling in the mud or anything. And I used to be a zookeeper back in the 80s, and I've taken care of primates and reptiles and things like that. So, yeah, I was impressed that he looked as neat and clean as he did. I mean, he didn't look like he was going to a job interview or anything, but I, I noticed that he looked like he wasn't an old shaggy guy. He was kind of a young, filled out adult. He had
Hmm.
his chest and his shoulders were definitely filled out. They weren't skinny.
Yeah.
And the only other thing I really noticed was that he was brown from head to toe, because I could see all the way down to his feet. I couldn't tell much about his feet because, yeah, there was a little bit of grass or something growing there.
Hmm.
But yeah, there was not another spot of, other colors on him other than a difference in tone based on what I could see of his profile. I wish I had been able to film it.
Yeah. Those moments seem to go by so quickly. You don't want to sully it and miss anything, by looking for that camera.
I know. I know. I was sure that if I looked down, if I took my eyes off of him for even a split second, that it could be gone.
Hmm.
And so that was just a big treat for me. And I've seen other things. I was with a person back in the late 90s in Kansas, and we had gone camping on a little lake near Manhattan, Kansas, Lake Potawatomi. There's like Lake Potawatomi 1 and Lake Potawatomi 2. And this is the one that was less uh, visited by people. So we had kind of a private area. And we were getting the camper all set up and standing outside. And rather than tall trees there, they had tall shrubs. So the shrubs were taller than us, but all of a sudden, this was the closest thing I'd seen as far as UFOs go. This big black triangle that wasn't very far above us glided into view right above us. And we were standing there with our mouths hanging open. And it was completely silent. It had no markings on the bottom. Have you ever seen those pictures of TR3Bs? Those big triangles that they don't have any definition to them. I think that was one of the early ones that the government here in the United States copied, is what I've
Okay.
read. But that's what it looked like, except I kept scanning the bottom to find any kind of marks or definitions for things like lights, because it was completely black and this was the daytime
Hmm.
and it was completely silent. So it glided over us about, I don't know, 100 feet up. It was really low. And as soon as it got out of sight, I looked to my camping friend and I said, "Did you see that?" And he said, "Yeah." And so the first thing I thought of, because my son was young, he was about 5 years old, and I yelled, "Logan!" And he came running back around from the backside of the camper. And I said, "Okay, you're here. Did you see that?" I told him what I'd just seen, and he said, "No."
Oh man,
But yeah, that was another experience, but that had happened years ago. And
that's
oh,
wild.
my son's all grown up now, and a year after I was at E-CETI Ranch on November 4th, 2018, which that date is going to stick in my mind forever. We went up there. He flew in. He was working out of the country. He flew in for a visit, and I did not tell him that I had made reservations for us to camp up there. He was exhausted, so he slept in my truck as I drove. I just, told him, okay, we're going to go camping. And I got up to the gate there, and you have to get out and press in numbers. They email you numbers when you make a reservation. And I asked him to get out and press those numbers in so we could drive through the gate. And he asked me, "Where are we?" And I said, "E-CETI." And he knew what I was talking about because he's been making fun of me for years, telling me I ought to wear a tinfoil hat and all that stuff. So I had to take him up there so he could at least see those light ships, because every night that it's clear, you can sit out in their skywatch field and see those light ships. And there's a big mountain there called Mount Adams, and they kind of are drawn to that area, I guess.
Hmm.
James Gillian has said that he's seen, black helicopters come chasing in at times, but I guess it happens so frequently. It's been happening for so many years that the government's got other things to do, hopefully.
Yeah.
But that night, the first night that we set up camp there, and this was 2019 in August, I said, "Okay, let's go over the Skywatch field." And it was so dark, and you don't really want people to, have their flashlights out because we're trying to see up in the sky as dark as it can be. But we could hear people talking that had come there. There's a lot more people there in August than when I first went there the year before. And they were speaking in so many different languages. It was obvious these people have come from all over the world to get to be here and do this. So we sat down and waited, and James Gillian came out and he was pointing some of them out to us. And they're just light ships. It's not like you can see any definition of a flying saucer or anything, no cigar shapes. It was just glowing lights that are obviously up there at the same level that jets fly, sometimes even higher. And they would do things. James Gillian would use his laser pointer to kind of circle. He wouldn't point straight on it. He would point by circling it and showing everybody. So, because there were multiple ones going at the same time, he said, "There's a good one." And it looked a little larger than the other. So we were all staring at that one. and it was cruising along. And I said, "Power up." And it did. And that's where it starts to glow real bright. And then the light goes back down. So that was another thing I got to check off of my bucket list. Plus, now my son, if he makes fun of me, I just have to say, "Hey, you saw them. You know they exist." So that was
That's
great.
that's amazing. I've heard before people saying that you can communicate with them like telepathically almost.
Yeah. Well, apparently that one wouldn't have powered up, if it hadn't heard me somehow, because it did it exactly when I asked for it. I've heard other people do that. I've seen them on film doing that. So I thought, I got to try this. And it worked. It was great. I loved it.
That's
That's
amazing.
awesome.
Luke,
And
we're
I
gonna have
feel
to
like
go
the
out there.
Sasquatch also are telepathic.
Hmm. No, I
I
was just
agree.
telling. Yeah, I was just saying, Luke, we need to go out to that ranch. That sounds like fun.
Oh, it is. It is. It's a wonderful experience. And the Northwest is great. Um, I I haven't seen anything else out in the woods in the Northwest. Like I said, my major UFO sighting was actually in Kansas, and that might have been uh, a retro engineered thing that the government had made. I don't know, but I would think it would have more definition to it if it the black
Hmm.
triangle if it had belonged to the government. That's a disagreement I have with the fellow that was standing there with me. He thinks that it had something to do with our government, and I'm not so sure of that.
Hmm.
I mean, even there, even seeing it looks crazy just to see something like that. Even if it is government related, it's still something crazy to see.
How
Yeah,
big was
those
it?
those are the things I remember the most. I have seen. Oh, the triangle.
Hmm.
The Yeah, it was huge. Let's see. It was probably about, I don't know, let me think. Based on, you know, how close it was, I would say it would cover up the footprint of a normal suburban house. And what are they, about 40 by 80 feet or something like that? I don't know. So it was probably about along one uh, edge of the triangle. I guess it would have been at least, oh, 100 feet, 80 to 100 feet.
Wow.
So you can do the
That's
math on the
wild.
triangle part. It was definitely an even triangle. I didn't notice it being shorter on any of the sides, on any of those three sides.
You hear a lot of
But what really
stories.
impressed me was how it could glide silently.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that there's a lot of I hear a lot of claims of the triangular crafts. We actually had somebody on the first episode who their dad had seen a triangular craft above their house.
Ooh, yeah. I'm interested in being able to see things. I'm going to start spending more time staring up at the sky on at nighttime once the weather warms up. We've been under snow here. I don't know if y'all got that snow too.
Yeah, we got it.
Yeah,
Now, what do you
yeah.
think Bigfoot
It's
is?
a and what do I think he is? I think that they are um an organized kind of tribe. I think there's different groups of them in different areas. And a lot of the pictures or videos that I have seen, the ones that looked like they were real, you could see variation in the color of their fur. Um, the way this one was walking, he was strolling like a human. That's why at first I thought it was a neighbor. walking along. Uh, he seemed extremely stable, when he would take a step. When I walk, I kind of totter around, looking for things that I might like step in a hole or something. But he was obviously very comfortable strolling along this path. Um, and it just felt that he was not like an animal exactly. Of course, we're all animals, even humans. But he did not lean over like a primate does, because I took care of chimpanzees and I fed baboons and things like that when I worked for the zoo back in the 80s. So I could tell that the way he strolled, he seemed more human than he did uh, like an ape. But, so I don't think they're anything to do with apes any more than we are. I just think
Mm-hmm.
they followed a different evolutionary um, trajectory than humans. But then I suspect we could be ancient ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also listened to a lot of audio from a fella up in Ontario who has a YouTube channel. It's called Sasquatch Ontario. His name's Mike Patterson. And he just put out another video where he replayed um, an interview with a lady named Sonia something. Anyhow, I listened to it last night. It was recorded by someone else, and he replayed it on his channel. I was thinking about sending you a link to that. And um, his recordings from, oh, they go back for probably 10 years. He kept going up to this one location in Ontario that he keeps a secret, of course, because he was getting more typical type signs that there was possibly Sasquatch where he was camping, like things being thrown or tree knocks, which now I'm wondering if instead of those tree knocks, if those are them doing something with their tongue. Because it sounds a lot like a tree knock when you go,
Mm-hmm.
like that with your tongue. But imagine they've got a much bigger mouth and a much bigger tongue. So it's
Hmm.
going to sound much louder, and they seem to be very good at making noises. I have actually heard things that sounded like Sasquatch when I've been in the woods before, but I kind of shrugged it off. I went hiking in the Smoky Mountains a lot growing up. And, me and my friends, we just kind of shrugged our shoulders and said, wow, wonder what that is. And as long as it wasn't attacking us, we didn't worry about it. Um, so the recordings I've heard him that he was able to get over time, because he kept going back and he actually was starting up some conversation going back and forth with this Neff character that he got all these recordings from. That's pretty impressive, and also it shows that they have the ability to communicate with us if they want to.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to understand exactly what they're saying, but you're being communicated with. So I enjoyed listening to all of his recordings over the years.
I heard once before, like you said about with the tongue and them doing a clicking sound. That
Yeah.
sounds like a tree knock. I heard that once before in another podcast, and the guy was getting interviewed, and he said he heard this tree knocking sound, but he saw this Bigfoot in front of him, and he wasn't knocking on a tree.
Ah, well, there you go. Maybe it is a sound they make with their tongue.
I mean, it makes sense. Makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because why would you go around beating on trees?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people were there to communicate with Bigfoot, so I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think if you go hunting them, you're less likely to find them. One of the things the Sonya lady on that video that Mike Patterson just put out a day or two ago, one of the things she said was, they choose you.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, you do not get to choose if you get to see them. They will choose if you get to see them.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I think they are fairly honorable. I know that there's a lot of people, hunters, who have had things thrown at them. I've heard stories of people getting attacked, but not that many. And even when
Hmm.
people have lived out there, like there's this lady that has she was living in Kentucky. Her family had grown up there. They were back in the backwoods, and they apparently had a Sasquatch that had encroached on their property several times. But you think, or I think, encroaching on your property is something that it's not going to matter that much to something that already lives there in the
Hmm.
woods. So I've listened to a lot of different people's accounts, and I never really thought that I would get to see one. And when I went there, I sent out that message when I was driving up the mountain, and I sent it out with all the respect and honor that I could possibly radiate from, my energy. I just sent it out there as a very humble and respectful request, because
Hmm.
I knew if I was going to go hunting them, they were going to hide. So, and I think when hunters go so far back into the woods and run into issues, they've probably encroached on the Sasquatch, their group's stomping grounds, so to speak.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with you on that one.
So yeah, next time you want to go out in the woods, just ask real nice and be real humble about it. And I don't know if they'll come out if you've got a gun. They might start throwing things at you. I mean, I'm not
Hmm.
against guns. It's just that if I were a Sasquatch, I'd be a little bit more on guard if I was dealing with a human that was armed.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely think they know what guns are.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
believe they're very intelligent.
I do too. I agree.
Yeah.
Now going back to what you said earlier, what was that name that you called them earlier? I can't remember what you said it was.
Oh, Sasquatch, their tribes.
No, it's you when you were younger. You said you used to run
Oh,
from
oh, I don't know if that was Sasquatch or not. Cattywampus.
Calumalpas.
It was
Okay.
it's a southern, I guess it's a southern U.S. slang for some kind of critter uh, that people claimed they had seen. In Knoxville, there were rumors that people had seen this thing that was not a dog, it was not a cat. There are mountain lion type creatures that do roam around the Smokies, and every once in a while somebody will catch sight of one. I saw one run across the road one night when I was driving on the spur, which is a section of the Smoky Mountain Park between Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg. And mostly I saw my lights on my car hit its fur, and it kind of had a sheen to it. It was solid black and it had a long tail, and it just sort of zipped across the road in front of me. So, and I've heard lots of people in this area of East Tennessee talk about hearing them, and they say they can scream like a woman. So, I know those exist. So that could be what the cattywampus, uh, what that legend has come from, is people seeing those, and they're just so good at staying out of the way that we don't see them very often.
Hmm.
That's interesting. I never heard that term before, and I was like, hmm.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you about that more. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I was happy to hear things like that when I was a kid, because I loved hearing stuff like that, that there were things out there. It just made life more exciting. We didn't have internet or computers when I was a kid. You just go outside and play all day and have to come in at night, take a bath, and go to bed. But my father and I, after I'd get all cleaned up when I was a little kid, he'd like to sit out on the front porch, uh, in the evening. So mom would make me get cleaned up and put on pajamas, and I'd go out and sit on the front porch next to my dad. and he would point at things moving across the sky. Um, and everything that wasn't obviously a plane, he'd say, "There goes Sputnik," which was a Russian satellite, I guess. And also back then, the song "Purple People Eater" was playing on
Hmm.
the radio, and they got me a 45, little record of that. So I was listening to Purple People Eater and Puff the Magic Dragon. So yeah, I
I have both of
always
those songs on my phone, actually.
do you? Those are
I
great.
do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, being able to hear those when I was growing up was really, really exciting. Oh, by the way, that reminds me, when I was a kid, I don't know how old I was. I was probably no more than maybe 6 or 7 years old. And I was back in my bedroom and the door was closed. And mom had these room darkening shades. And so that was pulled down. I guess I was back there because I was supposed to take a nap, which I never ever did. So I was just sitting there on my bed, goofing around, and all of a sudden a light came in around the edge of the room darkening shade. It kind of slid in and came out into the area, in the middle between my bed and the Chester doors. And it got brighter and bigger and brighter, glowing, and it was freaking me out. So I yelled, "Mom!" And it disappeared. And she came back there and stuck her head in the door, and I told her what I had just seen. And she, in her spooky kind of way, goes, "Well, maybe somebody was trying to tell you something." And then she shut the door and walked away with my mouth hanging open, like, just what did I, how was she supposed to know what I saw? But it
Hmm.
didn't seem to phase her. But I was pretty freaked out. If I'd been quiet, I don't know what it would have done. I really didn't want to get abducted, that's for sure.
Had you
But
witnessed
then
anything
maybe
else in that?
maybe my
Oh,
mom had been abducted.
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, there's a little bit of there's a little bit of a thing connected to that. At least it's connected in my mind. Uh, Mom told me when she was pregnant with me, she was outside sitting under a tree, and she heard one of those sonic booms, because those planes that could break through the sound barrier or the speed of light, or whatever they did to go that boom that you used to
Hmm.
hear way back then, had recently come out. And she was startled by it, and she touched her stomach, and she was pregnant. And she said that transferred to me because I was born with a birthmark on my stomach, right where mom had touched herself. And it looked like a jet, like a triangular jet, only more, long, not like the perfect triangle that TR3B looking thing was. And it looked like it had little plumes of smoke coming out behind it. And it was on my midsection above my belly button. And it disappeared once I got to be an older teenager and a young adult. But when I used to have to dress out for gym uh, in middle school, girls would ask me, "Terry, what is that on your stomach?" I just tell them, "Hey, it's a birthmark."
That's interesting.
Yeah, it was whiter than my skin. My skin's white, but that was even whiter. It was sort of like a bleached out area. I'm
Hmm.
disappointed it went away.
And you said you have a
Excuse
YouTube
me.
channel, right?
Yeah, She Logic. I think I had to change it to the She Logic on YouTube, and it's mostly just for playlist of things that I want to save. I've uploaded a few videos, but nothing really all that great. I mean, when I was uh, camping, or I've been a campground host a couple of times, I would sometimes videotape the deer, Because one place I was camping in Arkansas, there was a ton of deer. I mean, they knew that if they came there, some of these people would feed them. And I knew that if you feed them, you're going to create monsters. In other words, they'll come and demand to be fed. Squirrels have done that to me. I learned the hard way not to feed the squirrels. But little things like that, a few concerts that I went to, like one of my favorites is something I uploaded from the Mushroom Festival in Eugene, Oregon. I think that was 2016 or 2017. And they were up on, a bunch of people were up on stage with this group. They were doing a percussion thing. I love that video. And then when I was out camping in the desert, when I was learning how to boondock, I would sit around the fire, and on Christmas Eve, let's see, that would have been 2018 Christmas Eve, because I had joined up with a caravan that was put together by Bob Wells, who has a channel on YouTube called Cheap RV Living. So I was part of one of those two caravans that he made happen that year. I was in caravan too, and so I have a little short video of sitting around the group campfire, everybody just kind of hanging out and chatting. And this guy next to me was named Rex, and he was making fun of UFOs and saying that it doesn't. They're not following. It doesn't make any sense because of physics. And I said, but you're not taking into you're not. The physics that they use may not be the same physics that we know. And nowadays, now that most of us realize we've been lied to a lot,
Yeah.
I'm more convinced than ever that there's more physics than what we know about in this universe, in this world even.
Yeah. I think even the government came out and stated that the UAPs that they have documented are defying our laws of physics.
Imagine that. Yeah, well, I'm ready for a car that floats. That way I won't have to buy tires, and I can
that sounds
probably
amazing.
evade somebody that's about to crash into me. I could probably evade that better because I'm a pretty decent driver, and I think I would enjoy that. I've had dreams. It's been a long time ago, but I had a series of dreams where I was flying one of those things around before I'd ever heard that we were actually going to have those. And because this was probably about late 70s that I was having the series of dreams. And I loved those dreams so much that I would go to sleep and go right back into another dream. But I flew those things in my dreams. And I also, at one point, I remember in the dream, I climbed out a window of a second story house onto the roof of the front porch. It was like one of those old 2-story houses. And I was able to take off flying with just my body in that particular dream. And it was so much fun. I really enjoyed those dreams.
Thank you for coming on and talking to us. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me, Luke and Dustin.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
enjoyed it, and I am going to have to catch up. I know y'all have uploaded some more interviews. I watched the first 2 so far, so I'm going to have to catch up with what you've been uploading.
We only uploaded one and more after that one.
Yeah, you got some great stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I look forward to hearing it. Also, I will share this with my friends on Facebook.
Have a good night.
You too. Good night.
Good night. Thanks for listening, everybody. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Exploring the Unknown. Don't forget to go and like our Facebook page, because we'll be posting all of our newest episodes there, and that's where you can keep up on everything Exploring the Unknown. If you guys are into conventions and you guys like Bigfoot, come out to the Bigfoot camping adventure out in Farmington, Pennsylvania, September 6th and 7th. Stop by and say hi. Me and Luke will be there set up, recording podcasts, talking to people, getting to hear some other
I think
experiences.
you have to pay like $50 for 2 days and $25 for one day, $30 another day.
Yeah, let me pull it up here real quick. Limited tickets are on sale now. $25 for Friday only, $30 for Saturday only, and $50 for the full weekend. Children under 12 are free.
I'm excited to do this. It's going to be fun.
It is going to be fun. It'll definitely help get our name out there for sure. I enjoy just talking to people and hearing about their experiences. It makes me, I don't know, it makes me feel a little less crazy, because I believe that there are things out there, but I've never really fully witnessed a whole lot, like personally. So I have a hard time being 100% yes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I also think it helps me be more social.
I definitely feel that it has boosted my confidence in talking to people. The world really isn't as scary as we know it to be.
Yeah, I'm not at the yeah, I agree. I'm like getting better at talking to people, but I'm not at that part yet, like public speaking, like in front of a bunch of audience. I'm not at that comfort level yet.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think that if I was in front of a whole crowd of people, as long as I knew what I was talking about. Was there anything else that we needed to mention? Or do you think that was it?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. Join us next week for another episode of Exploring the Unknown. We are releasing our episodes now on Sundays. Don't forget to go and check out our YouTube channel. We have the video version of our podcast there. And yeah, do you have anything else to add, Luke?
Sounds good.
All right. You guys have a great day.
See ya.